We have Harry Potter. There's apparently another one of those.
They keep making them. I will try to pretend that I understand the minutia of Harry Potter. If I offend any of you purists out there, I'm just going to apologize in advance. I did read the first 3 books and half of the 4th. So this is the 7th book, and Warner Brothers split it into 2 because why not? People will go see 2 movies of this last book.
First of all, the book is meaty, but if they could
500 pages, 700 pages?
Yeah, but it's not even the longest
pages.
one. Order of the Phoenix was the longest book, but the shortest movie.
But this, is that right?
Yes.
That's a little piece of
there you go.
Potter trivia for you. But this is the most significant book in that it wraps up the story, and if you wanted to look at it from a purely artistic point of view, and you shouldn't,
but you could.
there would be an idea that this would be a book that you would want to sort of cut the least from. Everything's important. They wrap up a story that means so much to so many people.
And wrapping up about 1,000 subplots.
Right,
so.
right. But of course, the main thing is that this was a chance to, instead of having 7 movies, have 8 movies.
Have 8, right. And so this one, they were going to convert it from 2D to 3D. And I'm really glad they didn't. Because they were going to rush it. And they knew it would be rushed. And it would become Clash of the Titans all over again, which Warner Brothers already had. And they realized that didn't work for them. So they're going to do the absolute last one, Part 8, Deathly Hallows Part 2, in 3D. When it comes out in July.
Right,
anyway,
that'll be out this summer.
So,
anyway,
here we go, Part 1. Basically, this sets up the beginning of the end, and the destiny that was waiting for Harry all this time, that Voldemort was going to come and kill him, it's finally coming. So the weight of the past and the unknown of the future all collide. Harry and Hermione and Ron must find the Horcruxes, which contain the pieces of Voldemort's soul, in order to keep Harry alive. And there's other stuff that happens too. Take a look.
Harry Potter, the boy who lived, come to die.
All right, so there you go. There is a little glimpse of Part 7, Part 1. And,
7.1,
right.
Part 2.
So here, Jonathan and I cheated a little bit. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. There was Jonathan, I'll let you make the point because you made it first yesterday.
Right. Well, I mean, for me, I've seen maybe 2 or 3 of the movies, and for me, the problem is that they're trying to put in so much story, and I don't, in the movies, I never got a sense that one thing was more important than the other, because everything is life and death, and everything is really, and everything, feels like it has so much importance. So I just felt like when I've seen the movies, it's always been like, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, then the movie just ends, and it's like, oh, that last thing was the most important? Oh, I didn't realize that. It was just a bunch of stuff.
I think this is very similar to Steven Soderbergh's The Girlfriend Experience.
Less handheld DV.
But I actually felt sort of the same way at the end. Like I liked The Girlfriend Experience. I liked the idea of it, but I couldn't ever tell in that movie what mattered more than anything else. And I think Jonathan has nailed it for this too. It was very hard to tell. It looks great.
It's gorgeous.
Technical specs are unbelievable.
And I actually care about the characters, which is another accomplishment. But I didn't. I felt like, hey, look, we're in Albuquerque. Hey, we're in Portugal. Hey, we're in Denver. Like, there was a great deal of that.
So are you saying this is like all the recent Gus Van Sant movies where the camera just like follows behind somebody and they don't really do anything for a long time and then all of a sudden it ends?
That's what I was looking for.
I don't think anyone's ever compared The Girlfriend Experience to Harry Potter. You're the first. This is a pioneering film criticism moment for you.
I just didn't. Was there any sense on your part that there was there was a flow issue? Like I really thought, okay, now they've woken up in a different forest that's snowy and they're pitching their tent here, and I know that she has one of her great magical strengths is the power of transport or whatever it is they call it. And I'm not trying to mock it.
What's the word? What's the word that they use when they move to different places?
I don't
know.
I can't remember.
Appellate, something like that?
No, that's apparition.
They can apparate, whatever.
Yeah, she's a smooth apparator.
Oh, you're horrible. Please edit that out when you guys do this.
That was good. So that's what bothered me, is the sense that following up what Jonathan said, that there was very little flow, and so it was hard to tell, same thing, what was more important than something else. And I think if you have a clear understanding of the story and the plot and of the whole arc of Harry Potter, it was probably easier.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's part of me that feels almost like I should recuse myself from the review, because, like, I just don't understand as much of the story, you know, and it felt, and especially since, you know, every fifth word is some kind of, like, fanciful nonsense word that I couldn't possibly understand what it was. Like, don't you remember when Schmoogle and Bingle got the thing?
And it's like, you do need to have seen them all to know who people are.
Yeah, and I can't fault it for that. Like, you coming in part 7, I can't expect, like, oh, I'll just pick it up and figure it out.
Right,
like,
but also in the beginning of this one, they do introduce a lot of new characters and a lot of little plot lines, and so you are a little off kilter at the beginning, like, okay, now who's this person? Have we seen him before? So I think unless you are absolutely steeped in, like, Potter Arcania, maybe you will feel a little lost. Go ahead.
I panicked a little bit in the beginning.
Did you?
Totally, because I'm like,
You're like, who's this guy?
I've seen them all. I've seen of course, all the movies, but right in the beginning, there's all the, like, they pick up and we're into it. Like, you know, Harry's underage, and so the
trace or something.
He's got the trace that the Death Eaters can find, and so he's going, and then it's cool, and then they make everybody else look like Harry Potter, and to protect him, and so they got the decoys like Air Force One.
Cool effect.
No, totally.
Because Harry has to. Well, Daniel Radcliffe has to act like all those characters, so he has to be like himself being Hermione, or be himself being Hagrid or whoever. That was kind of a cool little effect.
Yeah, no, it was. I thought it was totally cool, but we're into it, and then they introduce all these other characters. We get the Weasley's older brother, and we're supposed to know things about them. So if you've read the books, you do.
Then you're fine. Right, so if you read the books, if you've seen the movies, I do think this is very exciting off the top. It does suck you in with that huge chase sequence off the top. It does drag for a chunk there when they are in one place and then another, and it is a lot more about waiting and finding things that may or may not be there, and character development. And I think these guys are up for it because they've been in these characters for half of their lives, and they're better actors than they ever had been before.
They're all very good.
You can tell they know the characters like the back of their hands.
Yeah, so. and they're very comfortable together. I mean, they're all like brothers and sisters at this point. The scenery is so, like, jaw-droppingly gorgeous. Can we name that cinematographer for a second? A game I like to play, Eduardo Serra.
That's right.
Two-time Oscar nominee, Eduardo Serra, has these vast, like, gorgeously bleak, end-of-the-world, like, apocalyptic shots of these bluffs and these really foreboding mountains and these very desolate beaches. And I think that the scenery helps maybe fill in some of the blanks of the boredom and the mundane aspects of what they're doing, because it really reflects what's going on in their minds and in the confused state that they're in.
It's the way it looks. They've all looked pretty good.
Yes.
But they've looked progressively better, and this looked much more grown up.
Because they're all grown ups. Because the story is more serious.
And it works that way because the story is grown up, much more serious. This is more violent than the others. It's not. I don't think it's too violent, but it's definitely more violent.
There's no whimsy.
Right.
There's no happy Hogwarts Christmas feast or anything.
And the kissing between when romance happens, like for the first time, you get the impression that this romance is going to lead to no good, as opposed to like 14-year-olds kissing. Now you're like, they need to. You know, Hogwarts needs to be handing out condoms.
Wow, magical condoms. It tastes like strawberries.
Well, also, in terms of the look, I mean, one of the things that I really loved was the scenes where they go into the real London. Where it's like they transport out and it becomes this real gritty world, and you really see. I mean, it's not just different because it's
the Muggle world. But continue.
Yes, exactly. I mean, more than just like, you know, in the wizard world, there's flying things and monsters and stuff. It's just, it feels totally different. And there's a scene where there's like a magic shootout in a diner, which really feels like a gunfight, like as if like someone was robbing the diner. It was really, really well done.
And the look of it's different. Like it's grittier, there's more handheld.
Yeah, and just the way that people are kind of moving through the scenes and stuff is just really different. I mean, I feel like in this movie you see sort of the combination of styles that you see in like Twilight and the Lord of the Rings movies, and like the teen angstiness of the Twilight movies, and then the epic scope and like the lonely journey of the Lord of the Rings movies, kind of coming into that, and then obviously into
but the teen angst in Twilight blows, and it doesn't here. This feels authentic. I feel like I mean I like these people, and I feel like that what they're going that's simultaneous to this adventure to save wizard kind and mankind, you know, is realistically interspersed with, oh man, I want to nail Hermione. Yeah.
Which you do, because she's just so cute, and she's a grown-up now.
I don't mean I.
One might want to. I think two things are at work there. That the actors are better in the Harry Potter movies, and the source material is stronger.
Much stronger.
So therefore, it works better than Twilight does.
Although I do really, I want to see the Harry Potter kids fight the Twilight kids. And more to the point, I want to see Emma Watson fight Kristen Stewart.
Sure.
I think is really what it comes down to.
Emma Watson wins.
Yeah, Emma Watson
She has
wins.
magic on her side.
Yeah, and she's, you know, she's less mopey. But that said, like those are the problem is that unless you're a serious fanboy or fangirl, you are a little lost. But let's be honest as to who this is targeted to. Right. It's basically targeted to people who care about it a lot and people who care about it some. So I don't know that the reactions that Jonathan and I have really are all that relevant. They're not looking for so much as new viewers.
We don't need new recruits.
They're going to bring in new people for the seventh movie.
And so that said, I got the feeling that this was, you know, we also got to see real quick, we got to see much more of Ralph Fiennes as opposed to just some sort of the idea of Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort. And here he's actually, you know, he's interacting with other people. He's more evil and much more present.
He's totally frightening.
Which is
not just the nose.
Right.
Beyond the nose, he's really frightening.
And that's the way it is in the books. They had to bring him. Voldemort has to show up more. But as soon as when Voldemort takes on more of a personality, I fear him more. So I think that's better. But that said, it's good. You know, it really moves along. It's exciting right from the start. My only complaint would be that my biggest complaint, not my only complaint, would be it did end sort of abruptly, but it's in the middle of the story.
It's a cliffhanger ending to set you up for part 8.
There's a little bit. My mom used to say when they had those serials before movies, back when my mom would go to movies in the 1870s, and back when movies were a nickel, were free, basically, as my mom says. Who would pay $12 for a movie now? When I went, they gave you $1 to go to the movies. You took your $4 car to the movies, and then they gave you $10 and you watched the movie. That's how it was. But they had these serials beforehand, and they would be, you know, week to week. And she used to describe it as, and maybe others did as well, as once out of the pit. Like the hero would be stuck in the ditch. The car had gone off the road. They were stuck in the ditch, and the bad guys were coming to get him. And there was no chance of escape. That was the cliffhanger. And then the next week, you'd be walking down the street, being like, "Whew, glad we got out of that situation." Like, what do you mean? You were going to die? And I was waiting all week. And so there was some of that. Like, oh, there's like, you know, oh, they're never going to get this. And then Emma Watson would be like, "No, I figured it out in my book.
Right.
We're fine. We're fine."
No, there's a lot of expositions, a lot of setup, because it's all about the last chapter.
It's all about that. And you know what?
There you go.
And I'm looking forward to it. So I think they
Are
did their
you?
job, and I'm not steeped in the lore. So,
But aren't you not going to like it because it'll be in 3D, and you just don't like 3D?
Well, I don't like 3D. I think it's.
don't
I mean, this looked beautiful. They don't need 3D.
Yeah. And it's really funny. We did a story. Dave Germain, my colleague, did a story where he went to London and interviewed all of them. Daniel Radcliffe hopes that Warner Brothers does not convert the final movie into 3D. He thinks if any series does not need a gimmick, it's the Harry Potter
I
movies.
agree.
That's a very good point.
And they're beautiful. So why mess it up?
It's
I
already
agree.
largely shot. Is that right?
It's
It
done.
is shot.
They're done.
Yeah,
It's
they
done.
did it at the
Yeah.
same time, yeah.
Wow.
So.
All right. So ratings for this.
7.5. I think it's gorgeous. It's intense. They get better all the time. We should mention really fast that great sequence in the Ministry of Magic where they go undercover as the adults, and it's just, you know,
That's
it's
great.
frightening and intimidating and sort of absurdly funny. And anyway.
Yeah, it's a good scene, and it's a grown-up scene.
Yes, 7.5 from me.
Yeah, I gave it a 6.7. I don't think it's bad. It's fine. It's very impressive. Technically, it's very impressive. But it's hard to know what to say about it because I just don't understand it enough. So my review is worth nothing essentially.
I was actually a little more impressed with.
Did we even count him into the math then?
Yeah, leave him out. I actually remember now. I was more impressed with Harry Potter 6.
It's really good.
I thought it was also David Yates.
It's the second best one.
Yes, I think. What do you think is the first
The
best?
Alfonso Cuarón one, number 3.
I think 6 is the best.
Okay.
I think 6 was the Harry Potter and the Search for Spock.
Rapid Con.
Not entirely sure.
Phantom Menace.
But I gave this one a 7. I think it's good, and I think it really sets up the conclusion. I think fans will, I suspect, like it quite a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to get a sense of like how the fans were reacting to it as I was watching it, and then afterwards. I wish I had done the bathroom listen, where you go into the bathroom stall and then you just sit there and listen to people walking by and
Is that what
talking
you're
stuff.
doing in the bathroom?
What the hell is that?
Yeah. The bathroom listen. There's
Yeah.
a whole phrase.
I heard
for it.
that like filmmakers do that like after.
But he washes his hands afterward.
Yes,
They're
exactly.
clean.
No, that like filmmakers after a screening of their movie, then they'll go and like sit in the bathroom stall, and when people come in the bathroom and are talking to each other, then you can actually hear what they say.
All right, whatever, dude. Okay, so 6.7. I gave it a 7. That's going to pull the overall rating when you factor in my 7 to I believe 7.1 is what we're looking at for Harry Potter. Well received.
Yeah, it's at like 77% right now on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll play Mad for a second. It's like 77%.
Yeah, I think if you're not liking it, you're looking for reasons not to like it. I mean, this is what Harry Potter is.
Yeah, it is what it is at this point. Like
Yeah.
if you're not on board, you're not on board.